I saw it the moment I walked in the family portrait, perfectly framed, proudly displayed above the fireplace. Everyone was there. Everyone but me. My face had been cropped out clean, intentional, surgical, and no one said a word. They passed me mashed potatoes like it was just another Thanksgiving. Like I hadn't been erased. I wish I could say I was shocked, that it knocked the wind out of me. But honestly, it just confirmed what I already knew. I was never really part of this family, not the way they wanted to present it. So I smiled. The way you do when you're already hollowed out, and there's nothing left to grieve. I stayed quiet through dinner, through dessert, through the hollow toasts. And the next morning, before anyone could pour their coffee, I handed my parents an envelope and said quietly, "Don't open it here." Of course. They did. The house smelled like nutmeg, sage, and lies. My mother was in the kitchen, orchestrating chaos like a seasoned general. She looked up, offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and said, "Oh good, you're here." No hug. No warmth. Just confirmation that her head count was now complete. My dad barely glanced up from the football game. My sister, Mallory, waltzed in behind me 10 minutes later, full of laughter and perfume. She dropped her coat on the banister and declared, "Sorry I'm late, traffic was just tragic." Like she hadn't already made an entrance before even opening her mouth. Dinner was served with all the traditional dishes and none of the traditional affection. My place at the table far end, slightly off-center held a plain name card. Natalie. No decoration, no handwritten calligraphy like Mallory's, just printer paper and a font you'd use for a utility bill. They talked at length about Mallory's new apartment, her agency gig, and how brave she was to live in Manhattan, all by herself even though we all knew Mom paid her rent. I said nothing. No one asked where I lived now, or how work was going. No one remembered, or cared, that I'd just launched my own freelance design studio. When the wine was poured, Mallory raised her glass and said, "To family." I clinked mine out of politeness and tasted nothing. I watched the evening unfold like a guest at a show I hadn't auditioned for. My mother kept glancing over like she was trying to remember if she'd invited me. My father offered me a sliver of turkey like he was doling out rations to a distant acquaintance. Mallory slipped into every conversation like she was the headline act, and I was just background noise. After dessert pumpkin pie I brought, but no one thanked me for. My mom handed Mallory a gift box wrapped in gold paper. "Just a little early Christmas surprise," she said, eyes glittering. Mallory gasped theatrically as she unwrapped a designer scarf, silk, and subtle branding. "Oh my God, Mom, you didn't have to." "I wanted to," she said. "You've been working so hard." Then she turned to me and passed a small item across the table. A mug. Ceramic. Mass. Produced. It read, "Middle child, maximum chaos." The kind of thing you'd find in a clearance bin. Everyone laughed. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because I was too numb to flinch anymore. That night, I went upstairs to the guest room because, apparently, that's what my old room was now, and sat in silence. Not lonely. Just misplaced. Again. The next morning, sunlight streamed in through half-closed blinds, slicing across the beige guest room like silent judgment. The lamp on the nightstand flickered when I breathed too close to it. My old room had been painted over in neutral tones somewhere along the way. I'd been neutralized too. Downstairs, the clatter of silverware and Mallory's melodic voice echoed through the house. I waited an extra 5 minutes before going down, not out of rudeness, just preservation. "Morning, sleepyhead?" Mom chirped as I entered the kitchen, flipping pancakes like we were in a diner commercial. "We let you rest in." "You didn't let me do anything," I wanted to say. But I smiled and poured myself coffee. Mallory sat at the table in full makeup, holding her mimosa like a trophy. "We're opening gifts early, by the way. Dad couldn't wait," she said with a wink. The 3 boxes were already waiting under the miniature harvest-themed centerpiece. I recognized the wrapping paper, thick, elegant, satin-finished. Mine was noticeably smaller. Not that I cared. I'd stopped expecting equity years ago. Mallory opened hers first, of course. A soft gasp. "Mom. Dad? You didn't." They did. A limited edition leather handbag Italian, probably more than 2 months of my rent. She ran her fingers along the stitching like it was sacred. My mom beamed. It's just something special to reward your growth this year. I opened mine quietly. Inside, a candle, scented like pumpkin gratitude, the kind you'd see piled up at the end of a CVS holiday aisle. Tied to it was a handwritten tag that said, "For calm vibes and cozy nights, you need this." Beneath that, in printed font, "Gratitude is a choice." I held it like it might bite. Mallory giggled. "Oh my God, that's cute. It's so you." So me? What did that even mean? So overlooked? So inoffensive? Dad sipped his coffee and said, "That scent's not too strong, right? Thought you didn't like those floral headaches." I nodded slowly. "No, it's perfect." That was the thing about my family. They had mastered the art of delivering emotional bruises with a smile. Nothing was outright cruel. Nothing you could point to and say, "This is wrong." It was all subtle. Small. Insidious. Until one day, you woke up and realized you'd been fading from the frame for years. Later, while clearing plates, I caught Mallory glancing at the photo, again the one above the fireplace. Her eyes lingered for a second before she looked away. I wondered if she noticed I was missing, or if she was just admiring how good her hair looked in it. That evening, I slipped the envelope back into my bag. I'd considered giving it to them right then, after the gifts. But no, they weren't ready. They needed one more night to enjoy the illusion. Tomorrow, the frame would crack. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan, spinning in slow, indifferent circles like time itself was bored with me. I thought about all the moments they forgot. Like my 10th birthday. I had invited 6 classmates, spent the morning frosting cupcakes myself. Mom got the date wrong for the pizza order, and by the time she remembered, the shop had closed. We ate cheese slices on crackers and drank warm lemonade. Mallory had a piano recital the next day, so the party ended early. "We'll make it up to you next year," they said. They didn't. Or senior year, when I was named valedictorian. The school sent a letter home. No one mentioned it at dinner. On graduation day, they arrived late and left early. Mallory had a modeling call back in the city. The flowers they brought me were wilted and marked 50% off. Then there was college. I got into Northwestern, my dream school. I remember printing out the acceptance email, running into the kitchen, grinning like my chest might burst. "We're proud of you," Mom said, before immediately asking if I could defer a year so they could help Mallory settle into her new apartment. I deferred. I got a part-time job at a bookstore, paid my own way through school, late nights and instant ramen and long hours between classes. They never visited. Not once. When I had my first art gallery showing, I emailed the family group chat. No one responded. When Mallory landed a one-line role in a shampoo commercial, they hosted a party balloons, custom cake, photo booth. Dad called her our rising star. I was the one behind the camera, holding everyone's coats. Even last year, when I quietly launched my own business, I sent Mom the announcement. She left it on red. A week later, she posted about how proud she was of Mallory for following her passion fearlessly. The caption had emojis. Mine never did. But the part that stung the most wasn't their neglect. It was how normalized it became. How silence turned into standard. How I learned to stop sharing wins because I didn't want to watch them get ignored in real time. I used to think, maybe I was too quiet, too plain. Maybe if I'd been louder, flashier, more dramatic, then I'd matter. Maybe I should have joined a sorority, played tennis, dyed my hair blonde like Mallory. But no, that was a game I was never meant to win. I was always playing on someone else's board, under rules I never got to write. So instead, I learned to be useful, low maintenance, uncomplicated. I shrank myself to fit into the gaps they left me. But shrinking doesn't earn love. It just makes it easier for people to forget you were ever there. And now, they had pro-framed, matted, and cropped with precision. It started with something simple. A job application. I needed proof of residency for a design contract, just a formality. So I went to the local municipal records office on a slow Tuesday, thinking I'd be in and out in 10 minutes. Instead, I left with a question I couldn't shake. As the clerk searched for my file, she raised an eyebrow. "You're still listed as primary on the Briarwood property," she said, tapping the screen. I blinked. "I'm sorry, what property?" She tilted the monitor. "Briarwood Lane. My grandparents' old house, the one my family sold years ago, so I thought. I hadn't set foot in it since I was 16. I nodded slowly, trying not to look as disoriented as I felt. "Could I get a copy of that?" 2 days later, I had it in my hands. The house was never sold. It had been transferred. Quietly. Through a trust. Through my grandfather's will. To me. My name. My title. My inheritance. Except, no one had told me. They told me Grandpa left a few keepsakes, maybe a savings bond or two, nothing major. Mallory got his cufflinks and the watch. I got a vague, "He was proud of you." Turns out, what he really left me was the house. A house I'd forgotten how to claim. A home that had become a revenue stream for someone else. Because here was the twist. My parents had been renting it out. For years, renovating it, collecting money, all while pretending it no longer existed in the family. The deeper I dug, the uglier it got. Property taxes filed under their name, using forged authorization, maintenance receipts, billed to accounts I never signed for, tenant leases with my name scrubbed clean. Every document I uncovered felt like a puzzle piece dropped into place. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd erased me legally too. At first, I wanted to scream, call them, demand answers, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the weight of years of silence, maybe it was clarity. Or maybe, for the first time, I wasn't reacting, I was watching. And what I saw was this: they were comfortable. Too comfortable. They believed I would stay quiet. That I would keep being the easy daughter. The one who forgives and forgets, who shrinks and smiles. They didn't know that something had shifted. That silence no longer suited me. That next morning, I stood in the guest room and looked at the envelope on my nightstand. Thick ivory paper. Embossed seal. Inside, the original will, notarized records, tax filings, lease transfers, ownership certificates. I'd brought it here thinking maybe I'd confront them after the holiday. But after seeing that photo, after hearing them toast to family with my face missing above the fireplace? No. They didn't deserve the performance. They deserved the truth on paper. Thanksgiving morning came wrapped in false warmth. The scent of cinnamon rolls curled through the hallway, clinging to the walls like nostalgia dressed in disguise. Downstairs, Mallory's voice floated between rooms, something about airline weight limits and how hard it was to travel with taste. I lingered in the guest room longer than I needed to. Not because I was tired, but because I wasn't in the mood to step back onto their stage. I could already hear the laughter rehearsed, the casual digs disguised as affection, the carefully placed smiles made for photos I'd never be in. When I finally walked into the kitchen, my mother was plating scrambled eggs like she was styling a brunch spread for a lifestyle blog. My father scrolled on his phone. Mallory drank almond milk from a wine glass. "Hope you slept okay in the guest room," Mom said, not looking up. "The mattress has a personality," I replied. She laughed, like I was joking. I wasn't. "We made it through breakfast on autopilot," they spoke. I nodded. Mallory bragged about Barcelona. My parents nodded harder. No one asked what I was working on. No one noticed the envelope sitting in the side pocket of my coat. But I felt it. Heavy. Waiting. I let them exchange gifts again, more little surprises left, just because. Another silk scarf. A skincare set for Mallory. A book about manifesting abundance for me, complete with a handwritten note. "We believe in your journey." I wanted to laugh. Or cry. Or both. But I just smiled and sipped my coffee. It wasn't until the table had cleared, and everyone had settled into their respective lounging routines that I moved. I stood up, crossed the room, and retrieved the envelope. I walked back slowly. My heels didn't click dramatically. My voice didn't shake. There was no speech. I simply placed the envelope on the table. My mom looked up. "What's this?" "It's from me," I said. "Just, don't open it here." Of course, they opened it. I watched from the armchair as Mom peeled back the flap and slid the papers out with her manicured fingers. Dad leaned in. Mallory adjusted her robe and leaned forward too, trying to read upside down. At first, there was just paper. The soft whisper of pages turning. Then came the silence. The shift. I didn't need to look to know the moment they found the notarized will. I could hear it in the pause, in the sharp inhale from my father, in the way Mallory's voice, for once, vanished. My mother's hand began to tremble. She flipped to the second page. Then, the third. Dad sat back slowly, face gone pale. Mom's lips parted like she wanted to say something, but no words came. Mallory finally asked, "Wait, what is this?" I stood. "That," I said, "is the truth." Then I walked out of the room not because I was done, but because I knew. They had just begun to unravel. No one moved. The room, seconds ago full of background chatter and clinking cutlery, had gone still. The only sound was the soft crackle from the fireplace fitting, really, for how fast the illusion was burning down. My dad blinked too much, a nervous tic he never admitted to. My mom's fingers kept rereading the same paragraph like she could will it to change. Her mouth opened twice, closed twice. Still no words. Mallory sat straighter, eyes narrowing. "Wait, what is this?" I walked back to the table, slow and steady, heart calm. Not because I wasn't shaking inside, I was, but because I'd already grieved the loss of this family years ago. This wasn't confrontation. This was clarity. "It's a copy of Grandpa's will," I said, looking directly at my mother. Her eyes snapped to mine. "I've seen his will. We handled the estate. You were told he didn't leave much." "No," I said gently. "You handled the version you showed me. The edited one." My dad grunted. "This is ridiculous." I pulled the chair out and sat down. "Actually, what's ridiculous is pretending for years that the Briarwood house didn't exist anymore, that it was sold, when in fact it was left to me. Sole beneficiary, full title." Mallory scoffed. "Wait, that house? The one we used for my engagement shoot?" I turned to her. "Yes, the one you staged with pumpkins and fairy lights. The one you posted on Instagram with the caption, 'Home is a feeling.' Yeah, that house." Mallory opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. My mom finally said something, but not what I expected. "Sweetheart, this isn't what it looks like." I laughed under my breath. "That's funny, because it looks like you used my name, my inheritance, and my silence to fund your lifestyle." "It's not like that," she said too quickly. "It's complicated." "No," I replied, voice steady. "The will is very clear. That house is mine, and every rent check you've cashed, every renovation you approved, every tenant agreement you signed was illegal." My father's face hardened. "You have no idea what that house meant to this family. We needed the income. You were off doing your little projects. You never needed the responsibility." "No," I said, leaning forward. "I was excluded from responsibility. Conveniently, repeatedly, systematically. You made sure of it, then justified it by calling me independent." Mallory crossed her arms. "This doesn't make you better than us." "No," I said. "It makes me not beneath you anymore." The air shifted again. Heavier now, denser. My mother's voice dropped to a whimper. "But we depended on that money. We built our lives around it." I tilted my head. "Then maybe you shouldn't have stolen it." Dad slammed his palm on the table. "If you walk out now, don't bother coming back." I stood, slowly, letting the silence stretch. "I think that's the first thing we've ever agreed on." Mallory stared at me like I was someone she didn't recognize. Maybe I was. Maybe for the first time, I wasn't the background character, not the seat filler, not the afterthought. I was the main act. And I wasn't even raising my voice. "I've filed the ownership transfer," I added. "Effective immediately. Rent goes to me now. Your access to the house is revoked. Any attempt to enter will be considered trespassing." Dad's jaw tightened. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me." Mom's face crumbled. "Natalie, please." "No," I said softly. "You don't get to cry about losing something that was never yours." She reached for me, but I stepped back. "You cropped me out of the family photo," I said. "But you forgot one thing: I still exist, and now I have proof." I walked to the door and grabbed my coat. "Wait," Mallory called after me. "So what, you just get to punish all of us? For what? Being a little selfish? That house paid for my education." I looked back. "And what paid for mine? Oh, right, me. Alone. While you all played house with my inheritance." My mother whispered, "We can fix this." "I'm not broken," I said. "I just stopped pretending this was love." And with that, I left. Out into the cold November air, sharp, clean, and honest. For the first time in years, I breathed. 3 days after Thanksgiving, the first message came through. It was from my mom, short, polished, probably rewritten a dozen times. "Hi, sweetheart. We think there's been a misunderstanding. Can we talk sometime this week? Hope you're well. Love you." No punctuation after "love you." Just hanging, like a coat on the wrong hook. I didn't respond. The next one came 2 days later. "Please don't let this one thing ruin everything. Mallory is very upset. Dad's trying to stay calm, but you know how he gets when he feels blindsided." Blindsided? Not when he lied, not when he forged, not when he profited, but when he got caught. A voicemail followed. I didn't listen to it, just stared at the notification for a second, then deleted it. The last time he called me kiddo, I'd offered to help him set up his retirement account, and he replied, "Let's leave the money stuff to people who understand it." Right, because he understood so much better. Then came the message from Mallory. "You really think this makes you the winner? Fine, take the house, but don't come crying back when you realize money doesn't buy family." I read it twice. Not because it hurt, but because I wanted to let the irony settle in. The next day, another message. "Mom and Dad are talking about selling the condo. That's what you wanted, right? Congrats." That one I didn't even finish reading. I just archived it. But privately, I started hearing things. A mutual friend told me my parents were scrambling to refinance. Turns out the rent from the Briarwood house had covered more than I thought. Their mortgage, vacations, even Mallory's creative retreats. Their fragile financial house of cards had leaned entirely on the thing they swore didn't exist. The tenants' 3 families now paid me directly. I lowered the rent slightly, sent out fresh maintenance contacts. One of them emailed me back. "Thank you for treating us like people. It's the first time a landlord's done that." That meant more than any apology my parents could ever send. Mallory moved back home. Her apartment in the city had been paid for from the same source. Her art collective disbanded. She tried launching a GoFundMe for a new creative chapter. It raised $78. 2 of those dollars were from my ex-boyfriend. For some reason, that part made me laugh. Meanwhile, I started fixing up the house. It was dusty, yes, a little neglected, but it had bones like I did, solid, unshakable. I painted the windowsills, repaired a fence, hired a contractor to deal with the plumbing. Most of the furniture my parents stored there I donated. Except for one thing, a navy blue armchair that I vaguely remembered from my childhood. It didn't feel like it came with guilt or strings. I kept it. The house began to feel like mine. Not just in paperwork, but in energy. In silence. Real silence, and not the kind that suffocates, but the kind that allows space to breathe. I stopped checking my phone every hour, stopped rehearsing what I would say if they called again. Because here's the truth. Power doesn't always look like yelling. Sometimes, it's a signature. Sometimes, it's a lock changed. Sometimes, it's not replying. I didn't want revenge. I didn't need groveling. I just wanted peace, ownership, a life I could recognize as my own. And now, I had it. I planted herbs in the backyard. Basil, mint, rosemary. Little things that grew because I watered them. Because I cared. No one handed me this house with a ribbon, but it was mine. And I made it bloom anyway. Spring came quietly. No dramatic music, no grand finale, just longer days, warmer light, and the sound of wind shifting through new leaves. For the first time in years, I didn't dread waking up. I still lived in the Briarwood Housenot out of defiance, not to prove a point, but because it felt like mine, authentically, peacefully. The walls no longer echoed with memories I had to fight against. They were just walls now, mine to repaint, mine to choose what stays and what goes. I repainted the front steps, replaced the old brass mailbox with one I picked out myself, filled the windowsills with succulents and trailing ivy, low-maintenance plants, survivors, like me. Then, one morning, I did something I hadn't planned. I framed a photo. It wasn't flashy, just me, standing on the front porch in jeans and a sweatshirt, holding the keys to the house. My smile was quiet. No one else in the frame. No one had to be cropped out. I placed it on the mantel, right where the old family portrait used to hang. Sometimes I still get messages. A forwarded chain email, a birthday card signed, "Love, Mom and Dad," with no return address. A cousin texting, "They miss you, you know." Like missing me now erases years of choosing not to see me then. I don't reply, not because I'm bitter, but because I'm done translating silence into longing. Love, the kind that matters, doesn't need to be earned. It's given. Freely. Or it's not real. And what they gave me was always conditional. What I gave myself was everything else. There's no dramatic closure, no family reunion, no perfectly timed apology that ties everything in a bow. Just me, living, breathing, thriving without permission. I used to think healing meant reconciliation. Now I know. Healing is reclaiming the parts of yourself no one clapped for. The house, the garden, the photo on the mantel, none of it screams. None of it begs to be noticed. It just exists. Like I do now. Whole. Seen. Enough.